I'm curious because I had a friend of mine. I literally had an investor dinner the other day, and early 2000s, he sold his pharmaceutical company for 22x, and then he bought an insurance company and he sold it for 2x. And I asked him, what did you learn during, both of those exits? Both were very, very, pretty solid. But he said, I realized, he told me this. He says, next time I'm going to be more strategic on where I deploy capital and where I'm going to acquire companies, because I want to make sure I'm in an industry that has a better multiple. And I'm curious, and this might not be relative at all because you're already kind of optimizing for EBITDA, and that's going to obviously, increase your multiple when you exit, and definitely the buy and build will naturally, increase the multiple as well. So I'm curious, do you think of that when you're looking at different industries to do this buy and build strategy, or is that irrelevant because, like you just mentioned, where, hey, I'm going to optimize for EBITDA, and I'm going to obviously do this buy and build, and we're going to get this to the 25, $50 million EBITDA margin, where now all of a sudden we get a really good multiple, et cetera. So I'm just curious, how do you think about that when you're looking at
when I was earlier in my career, chasing money and titles and, young person stuff like that, I paid less attention to the industry I was being hired to go run. I was paying more attention to, call it who the sponsor was, and what were the economics for me. As I got a little older, though, I became much more selective in terms of where I was going to spend my time for that specific reason. If I'm going to do a buy and build and I'm in a market that's moderately fragmented or lightly fragmented, not highly fragmented, I'm going to have a problem hitting my goals and objectives. I worked in that commercial laundry industry for 13 years and 3 different sets of shareholders. And there were 3 large players in that industry when I started. And I felt like it was this giant Pac-Man screen. And these 3 people were buying all the companies and we were all eating dots. And then 13 years later, we're looking at each other like there's nothing left to buy here. It's like we got to eat each other. And it's like the roll-up is complete, right? I go over to HVAC. Well, hell, there's 40,000 HVAC companies in the United States. I could do a buy and build for 100 years and never run out of Pac-Man dots. And so what I started looking at was, as I was getting older, wasn't just about what they were giving me or offering me. It was about, hey, I want to analyze the industry. I want to understand the dynamics, the multiples, the arbitrage, and I want to make sure that I'm walking into a situation where I know that I will be successful, and preferably successful faster than 5 years, because more pay. If I'm doing it in a 3-year hold period instead of a 5-year hold period or a 7-year hold period, more paydays. I'm 59 now, so my runway has some kind of an end to it eventually. It's like, if you take 20 years and I'm doing 3-year flips, that's 7 bites of the apple versus getting 4 if I'm doing 5-year hold periods. And so, I think a lot of times people just get into an industry. Hey, there was an opening for a CEO job. I took it. That's not how I work anymore. There's an opening for multiple CEO jobs. Where's the best industry? Where's the best use of my talents? Where are the dynamics ripe for me to get in and do a buy and build? And so I think a lot of people ignore industry, and to me, if I'm a family office or an investor, there's going to be a lot of time spent around a thesis before I dig into anything. And it's like, why am I attracted to this market? Is it just because KKR or Blackstone or somebody else bought a company in it? So there's one PE firm in it, therefore now there needs to be 50, and it's like, I want to do the work, do the study. So I believe in thesis-based, investing where, research is done, markets are studied, and I'm looking for, call it an industry that's ripe. And even if it's crowded, as long as it's highly fragmented enough, then I can still get in and do my thing, then I'm in. So I think a lot more scrutiny needs to be placed on what's the industry dynamic versus just there's an opportunity to go do it, because not all buy and builds will work or be successful. Highly independent, or highly dependent on the fragmentation of the industry, the multiple arbitrage, that exists in a given industry. And I'm sorry your friend didn't do well in an insurance agency. I owned one with my brother for 15 years, and for us, it was a home run. It was about an 11x multiple of invested capital, and we did really well.
It might have been a down market, but I appreciate your mental model and the perspective, the way you think about it. Because, like you mentioned, you're not optimizing for, hey, this industry has an XYZ, average multiple. We're really looking at the fragmentation. There's other factors that you're kind of bringing in that carry a lot more weight when you're underwriting a niche, if you will, an industry that you're going to go after. And I think fragmentation, you mentioned numerous times.
Yeah. So let me just give you like a couple little really quick things. If I think about life, if I'm going to do this and I haven't picked an industry, I want to focus on needs, not wants. If I focus on an industry that takes care of a basic need, then in a down economy, I have resiliency built in. If I'm getting into an industry that's focused on wants, in a bad economy, everyone can turn off their spending because it's not a need. And I have much more, up and down cyclicality to it if I'm in an industry focused on wants, not needs. Secondly, I'm then looking for recurrent revenue streams, so versus project based. Let me give you a good proxy for all of this. A pest control company, it services needs, not wants. If you live in Florida, Texas, California, or other places, you got bugs. You sign a contract, and I now have a recurrent revenue stream. I'm very efficient with customer acquisition. If I'm a project-based business, here again, I have to go look for a brand new customer when one project ends to start a new project, and it's a different customer. If I can sign a contract and have an ongoing revenue stream, then I'm going to, it's much more valuable, and my customer acquisition time and money is spent on organic growth, not on churning to keep even. And so needs, not wants, recurrent revenue, not project based. And, if I can do these things, and then, I apply this thing I call the 30-20-10 rule. It's like I'm looking at minimum 30% gross profit margins, less than maximum allowed is 20% SG&A, minimum net profits 10 cents on a dollar, or 10% at the bottom. And if I look at an industry, needs, not wants, contracted revenue, and it passes the 30-20-10 rule, I can build $1 billion business. Just if it meets those basic criteria, I can build $1 billion business.